Hello and welcome. I'm Kevin Reinhardt, a staff fellow with the IAASB. Today, we'll be discussing a key initiative transforming the future of audit and assurance, and that's the IAASB's Technology Quality Management Workstream. As emerging technologies are transforming the way engagements are performed, they bring incredible opportunities as well as new challenges to maintaining trust and quality. In today's conversation, we'll explore why this initiative matters. We'll hear about what we learned from global stakeholder discussions, as well as how the IAASB plans to support firms in applying its standards in this rapidly evolving environment. I'm thrilled today to be joined by Tom Seidenstein, Chair of the IAASB, to hear his perspectives and ask some key questions about this work. Tom, thanks for speaking with me today.
Thanks, it's great being here.
Yes, absolutely. So I'd like to start with the big picture. What prompted the board to launch this initiative, and why is now the right time for this work?
Well, before I start, I just wanted to thank you, Kevin. Many people may not realize this, but we at the IAASB really benefit from a strong staff fellow program, getting talented young professionals from current practice into here and active part of the project teams, and you've done a great job, and we've been thrilled to have you as part of this project from the very start, and we wish you the best as you return back to your work.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. My pleasure.
Yeah. So I think you hit on it. Like, this is more than just quality management. Like, the question of how standards address technology really goes back to a more fundamental issue: is how do we make sure that audits remain relevant with the proliferation of technological tools, both at clients, but also within the audit firms themselves. And secondly, how do we make sure that the profession remains attractive for future generations? Because young professionals will be expecting to work with digital tools that are pervasive in every other profession out there in the marketplace. So, like, we as the IAASB are exploring how can we leverage technology to ensure audit quality. And really what we're doing today on quality management is how can we use our quality management framework to ensure that the tools are being acquired or developed in a way that will serve the public interest, be consistently applied throughout firms and networks, and give people confidence that the outputs lead to good outcomes.
No, that's great, and you know this, but the team recently completed a series of 8 global roundtables that brought various stakeholder groups together around the world. And the goal of these discussions was to, one, understand how firms are using technology in engagements, to what challenges they're facing in applying the quality management standards, what are the expectations of external stakeholders, and lastly, what is the IAASB's role in all of this? It'd be great to hear more about what came out of these roundtables, and maybe starting with what were the most consistent themes you heard about how technology is impacting engagements?
So the first thing I would say is that we had a consistent theme that our quality management standards provide very strong principles to guide the management of technological tools and resources. I think that was across the board. But they don't today provide much guidance on how to manage quality in terms of how you deploy the resources across the firms. Particularly as generative AI and agentic AI are becoming more commonplace, there's a question about, can we as a standard setter address a few key areas? First is like the explainability of the tools. Like, how do firms manage the lack of potential explainability of AI tools? Secondly, it's how do firms manage and monitor the AI models that they've put in place, because they're not static, they evolve. Thirdly, people want to understand, and particularly this came for the regulatory community, if tools are being developed at a network level, what element of documentation, training is done across the firm? That leads us to the next point we've heard is, like, from a quality management perspective, how is training done in terms of the professions and who is capable of using specific tools? And then we heard a consistent theme about we still need to manage the confidentiality and security expectations around specific client data if they're inputted into the tool itself. So those were 5 areas that people said, as a standard setter, we're not going to tell you exactly what you should do, but you should pay attention to, and you can provide some useful guidance on.
Yeah, as a participant in the majority of these sessions, I think that's a great summary of the topics that arose. But maybe a follow-up is, was there anything that surprised you or challenged your initial assumptions from what you heard?
Well, I think the biggest issue we're facing is just the sheer speed of which firms are experimenting and taking up these tools for adoption. I think we're at this inflection point between experimentation of the tools to embedding AI in core audit workflows. 1 or 2 firms said by the end of next year that it could be embedded throughout most audit processes that they're undertaking. So, we've gone from sort of interest in what we're doing to sort of, we really need to figure out how to get this right so we avoid fragmentation in terms of regulatory approach, to ensure consistency of adoption across firms and networks. One of the other things that we heard also is sort of the differentiation of where different firms are at. Remember, we set standards to govern engagement from large to small, and there's this desire for some democratization of best practices. Like, in my mind, best practices as it relates to deployment of tools shouldn't be just owned by the largest firms, and if they have some best practices, there's a huge interest in making sure that's shared across the board, so all firms and all engagements could benefit from the value of technology if deployed properly.
No, absolutely agreed. And how do stakeholders view the balance between innovation on one hand and risk on the other when they see firms integrating these newer technologies into their audit and assurance practices?
This is sort of the one element, a core issue that we face, that people are concerned about over-reliance on technology and the risk that it poses, and like whether you can trust the tool, do we know what it does, governance. But in my mind, the greater risk is of doing nothing and standing still. So I think we have tools and principles in all of our standards all the time in terms of how to manage risk and innovation. Our risk-based models that we've implemented with ISO 315, the work we're doing on audit evidence and risk response, are about getting the frameworks to be able to cope with managing risk and taking appropriate procedures to set the guardrails up. And I think innovation needs to be managed within certain guardrails, and I think if we focus on explainability, the quality of audit evidence, the management of the tools through our QM system, I think it's possible that we can mitigate these risks and take advantage of innovation in this day. I think the biggest challenge we face is to be a little bit too cautious here, because the audit clients are going to develop these tools. They're using them already, and audit firms have to be ready to audit them.
Yeah, absolutely. And the change is coming, and it's largely already here. And did we hear anything about what were the significant challenges that firms were facing as they tried to adapt their quality management systems to try and keep up with this rapid technological change?
I think going back to the principles we have at QM that are robust, it's sort of like, how do you operationalize those principles in this fast changing world where things aren't static? Like the world that we used to live in was much more static, it was more deterministic. But if you think about ways tools used to be certified, you certified it up front, it would exist until you had the next version. Well, if something's always changing, how do you constantly certify and make sure the tool is working all the time? The other thing, secondly, we said, how do you work with third parties in this? And how do you make sure that their models are sufficient and not changing? And how do you continue to manage the risk associated with third party vendors in this? you know, how do you continue to manage the workforce too? How do you train teams to interrogate these tools in an appropriate way? Like, what does a concept learning model, and how does an engagement partner who has ultimate accountability for the audit ensure that his team is ready to use these tools in a way that the audit standards require you to use them? And then there's a whole other area about governance and data protection that firms have to come together. And so those are the sort of the key areas that firms we hear are facing as they try to manage the adoption of AI tools throughout firms. The one thing to say is, this isn't new. AI has been around. What's happened is the large acceleration of these large language models and how they're being incorporated in practice. So there's a lot we could learn from the past. It just is more pervasive today.
Yeah, sounds like everyone has a lot on their plate with this. So let's pivot a bit and look forward now. How is the board planning to use all of the feedback gathered to shape the next phase of this work stream, and what should our stakeholders expect next?
So the first thing is that the IAASB always acts based upon the evidence that we've received. So we've had these 8 global roundtables, we've had lots of bilateral meetings with practitioners, with reporting firms, with technologists, with regulators. We're going to take all that information back and really challenge our hypothesis, which is that the principles remain strong, but non-authoritative materials or guidance on how to apply these principles to certain circumstances makes sense. And the focus should be on guidance first and rapid guidance. And that's what we'll be bringing to this board for our first discussion in our December meeting, which is happening next week. And we may focus on areas like tool certification, ongoing monitoring, accountability, and governance. And those may be topics like, this is my personal view, we haven't talked about it at the board, is that the type of guidance we want should be short, sweet, and be able to get to market quickly. If we spend a lot of time writing guidance, well, the market may move too quickly for us. And standard setters sometimes get caught up in seeking perfection, and I think the market needs guidance today on those topics. So, that will be the topic of discussion in December, and then by March, we should have an action plan ready for the market to see, totally transparent, and hopefully we'll be working on guidance simultaneously and getting things out to the market quickly.
Absolutely. And let me close with one last question, right, to bring this all together. How do you see this work stream helping to strengthen audit quality and public trust?
So everything we do is in the lens of public trust and audit quality. And we're not supporting innovation for innovation's sake. It's not a shiny new tool. We're not inhibited in innovation. We are in this space because we believe that technology and digital approaches, properly governed, offers a possibility to enhance audit quality because you have access to more data, more information, and more power in terms of calculations and access to advice to guide people into the right direction. None of this undermines the need for professional skepticism, competence, commitment to ethics. And we remain 100% committed to that. And by reinforcing our quality management standards with sound application material, I think we continue to go down that path. And again, going back to where we were in the first place, is we want to make sure that audits remain relevant and high quality, and that future generations of accountants want to be auditors in the future.
Absolutely. I think that's a great goal. So, Tom, thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and helping us understand why this initiative matters.
Thank you.
As you've just heard, emerging technologies are transforming the audit and assurance landscape. The technology quality management work stream is focused on ensuring that innovation happens responsibly, that it remains anchored in strong principles that protect audit quality and public trust. We'll continue to keep stakeholders updated as this work stream develops, and including the development of practical guidance that will support firms globally. Thank you for joining us, and please stay connected for more. Take care.